and thank you for the invitation. It's always nice to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, and of course, I'm here to speak about one of the children of ATV. I have been looking closely into the story of the industrial PhD program, which was created by ATV in order to find a critical angle. Because when you are celebrating, there must be someone who are telling the truth, and not only all the good stuff, but actually it has been very difficult to find a lot of critical angles on this baby called the industrial PhD program. It is, I would say, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, program, R&D program in Europe, with the focus on R&D and innovation activities in companies. When it was created with the focus on promoting education, PhD education, research in companies, and innovation. So that was in 1971. So the idea about combining education, research, and innovation is not new. The knowledge triangle were already foreseen by ATV, and I would say that is a good story to tell. Of course, I have been looking into whether I could find some critical angles, and I will come back to that because we can still do it better. But since we also want to celebrate this child, which is now 41 years old, I mostly have good stories about it. Well, I don't want to go into a deep description of this scheme. Some of you are familiar with it. It's about educating PhD students in companies with state aid and with the network between universities and companies in order to promote research in all scientific areas. That has been a challenge. 10 years ago, it was not in all scientific areas, but we have done a lot during the last 10 years in order to promote this scheme in all scientific areas, also in humanities and social science. And from 0% number of projects in humanities and social science, we now have 25% of all projects in humanities and social science. It is regarded, and I think it was also thought as an entrance to a career, a research career in the business sector. When we look at the ordinary students, PhD students, 80% of those PhD students stay in the public sector and only 20% go in the private sector. But if we look at PhD students, when they're finished, 85% stay in the private sector and 15% go into the public sector. So I think this is a good example of a scheme which have a focus on the business as well as education and research. And also it's a success if the aim is to have more students and research in the private sector. Today, I don't know what the amount of support was 41 years ago. I think an ordinary salary 41 years ago was about 5,000 crowns a month for an average worker. And now we have that the PhD student gets approximately 30,000 crowns. That is 4,000 euros, and we give up to 50% of subsidy for the salary. So it's the same for small and large companies, but we have participation in this program. 50% of all projects are in small companies. So that's a lot, and we think that's a success. We have discussed together with the Danish Council for Technology and Innovation how we could increase the number of small companies hiring a PhD student. And we have also tried to develop several models during the crisis. We saw a sharp reduction in the number of applications, but now we are back on track, and it seems to be a very attractive scheme for students as well as enterprises. It is actually the Danish Council for Technology and Innovation who is responsible for the industrial PhD program today. but they have handed over the administration of this program to a committee who are deciding who should have who can be approved and who cannot be approved, and then the ministry takes care of all the administration. Another success story is that this is probably the scheme, the innovation or research scheme in Europe with a minimum amount of administration. When you put in an application and it is approved, then the student and the company get a letter, and also the university saying that we don't want to hear from you the next 3 years unless you deviate from your plans. This was introduced last year, so we have skipped all reports from university and the company. The only success criteria is that they will get their PhD, and if they don't, we will ask them questions about why not, and discuss whether the company should pay back the money. But so far we have a very high rate of success, and there's no reason why we should not have this model, because the company has an interest to have research, the student has an interest to have an education, and the university has an interest to educate people. So we cannot see why we should have a lot of reports to my office. I think we got, when I entered the ministry, we got approximately 1,000 reports a year from PhD students, and I have never looked into one single of them. And last year, all of them, they went away with the flood in the city of Copenhagen. So we decided, why should we look into this? It's just paper, and we don't need it. And 2 weeks ago, we also decided that we didn't want to have any signature from an official auditor about the spending of money in companies, because it was a too little amount of money, and it only create bureaucracy in the companies. So we decided to skip all that. And also some of this has been skipped for universities. So I would say it's not only the oldest scheme in Europe, it's also the scheme with a minimum or almost no administration, because we expect that the incentive to get an education and to do a good job will do all the impact. And so we do not need to control people. Of course, we have some single problems in this. The culture in companies, they cannot understand each other. So sometimes we get telephone calls from the PhD students who are saying that the companies want them to do work which they are not supposed to do, because when you get a PhD, industrial PhD grant, you are not allowed to work in the company. You should work 100% with your project. But of course, the project would fit into the business plans of the companies, else they wouldn't have this project. And half of the time, the PhD student, they work at the university. So, and sometimes the companies does not understand this, so we have to have a dialogue with companies and with the PhD students, so they're back on track. And I think only in one case out of the 1,000 PhD projects we have initiated during the last 10 years, we have had severe problems. So I would say that is 0.1%, and that is not much. So I think that's a success. In this case, I think they speak German, but they could be all types of languages. 12% of all new PhD, industrial PhD students, they are from abroad. I would say this is also a bad story, because for ordinary PhD students, it's 21%. So we need to increase the number of foreign PhD students with an industrial PhD. We have tried that with the special China scheme, where we allocated special money for Chinese PhD students to get a PhD in Denmark in a Danish company, but we couldn't get rid of the money. Nobody had very few applications. So that was also a bad story. But focus on these bad stories because else it would be too much celebration. Well, before I go to a good story, I would say I have been asked to talk about the future. Well, I'm very concerned about the future because I think we have too few applications from companies for this scheme. We have doubled the number of industrial PhD during the last 5 years. And I would love to double the number again from 120 or 30 to 250. But I think it's a pity that we have only approximately 200 applications a year. And it's a shame that 40% of these applications, they cannot be approved because they have not the quality we would like to have. And here I see where do we have people from universities? Why do you send the applications and sign them if they are not good enough for the industrial PhD students, for the industrial PhD program? Because we see, I think, a lot of applications which does not comply with the quality criteria. And that is actually a thing we are very keen about, because we don't want to have a discussion that an industrial PhD has not a good PhD compared to an ordinary PhD. Because we have seen this discussion in other countries. This program has been such a success, so it has been copied in many countries. I think that 15 countries around Europe now who are having this program, and also the European Union. But in some countries, especially in Germany, they are against this program because they say it's the industrial PhD students, they're not good enough. It's an easy way to get a career and to get a doctorate degree. But you know about the discussion in Germany. They all have, well, copied their PhD. So maybe there's a special German angle on this. We don't see that in Denmark. And the quality of industrial PhD is as high as an ordinary PhD. And I think this is due to very good companies with a high degree of R&D activities, and also close collaboration with universities and enterprises. But this could be better, and I would like to see more applications. Well, we have the best, or most well-documented R&D scheme in the world. The industrial PhD scheme is simply the only scheme where we can document almost everything. We have the register of data from the beginning, and we cannot find any other country in the world where there's a register with data from the beginning of this program. We can also trace in the Danish national statistics researchers from their birth to their death, and we know where they have been working, so we can see all the type of mobility between the public and private sector and different companies. We also know about their salaries in the companies. We know everything because we have a very excellent tax system who report everything to us. And this means that we can actually see what are the main impact for individuals of this program. And it turns out that there are positive impacts for each and every one. If we take an average or industrial PhD student, then we can always find another person in Denmark who are almost a twin to this person with the same education, with the same age, with the same number of children, living from the same city, and so on. And then we can compare 500 industrial PhDs with their twins in the system and see if they have doing better or worse. And this has produced excellent research, good research in international journals, but also it has proven that industrial PhDs, they're doing it much better than ordinary PhDs and also than people without a PhD. But also we can see that companies benefit from this. Just to give you four quick shots, we can see that the gross profits in companies, they are much higher in the companies with industrial PhDs than in companies without industrial PhDs. And we can also find twin companies who have a PhD and who does not have a PhD. This is excellent research, and these results come up in international journals next year. We can also verify that the average number of patents in companies with industrial PhD students are double as high as in R&D companies without industrial PhDs. So we compare companies which are more or less the same, the only difference being that one company has hired industrial PhDs and the others have not. We can also see total factor productivity. Here we cannot see a difference. So the average productivity in companies are the same. What does that mean if they have increased gross profits? It must mean that they have a growth in other inputs. And if we look at the development and employment, we can see that for those companies who hire a PhD, they increase their employment up to 6 persons for each industrial PhD. So I would say this is a success story, but we could still do it much better. We could get more companies to hire industrial PhDs. Thank you very much for your attention.